It's that time again. It is the transfer show on Anfield Index. I'm, of course, joined by Mr. Dave Davis, who has all the latest on the comings and goings and ins and outs and twists and turns and the various stories at Liverpool and across the Premier League and Europe, indeed, because this guy goes deep on the burrowing when it comes to trying to get information for you for this show. As ever, a caveat, don't shoot the messengers. We're just here to have some jolly times and tell you the stories as we've heard them lately. Dave, from the best sources that he can find, presents this for us. And that's all this show is. We are not setting ourselves up as ITKs or all-knowing, just for the record. Dave, only really one place to start, buddy. It's the Florian Wirtz story, which I think an awful lot of people felt was too good to be true. And then most people have allowed themselves to think this is happening. There was such positive noises coming from so many different sources, so many little anecdotes about, Bayern officials and Bayern players, and basically people having shrugged their shoulders and said, it's done. And yet, the fact that it isn't done yet will have most people who are incapable of patience wetting themselves, and other people being quite sullen and glum about it and saying, is this going to be another Caicedo, Bellingham, etc.? Where are we with it?
I think we're all just waiting for developments, and I suppose people can define, Trev, how they want to see this at the moment, because you're right. I've seen quite a bit like, we're going to blow this, we're going to let ourselves down, it is another Caicedo and all this type of thing. Well, funnily enough, we're talking about an elite player. We're talking about a player that's going to cost over 100 million quid, however much the total package is, we'll have to see when it gets announced. But these things are never quick at all. But the key things to remember as we stand right now, as multiple journalists are briefing on this, Wirtz wants to come to Anfield. He's made that clear to all and sundry, to City, to Bayern, to anyone, they've had formal discussions with. That is quite clear. The other thing that's quite clear is Liverpool and Leverkusen are still talking, aren't they? They're still trying to thrash out the deal, if you want to use that phrase. And it all seems to hinge on the add-ons, what they're going to be, what the total package is. But they're at the stage of almost the frameworks there, isn't it? It's what's going to be the minutiae detail. What are the clauses going to be? So it's an interesting one. The one thing I would say as well is, what are we now? We sit here on the 2nd of June. It feels like, do you remember those episodes of The Bill where they used to go, for the benefit of the tape, DC Davis is confirming the time and date type of thing. So it's the 2nd of June. There's still 8 days of transfer window 1 to go, as we're going to call it. So there's plenty of time there. The other thing to remember as well is, Wirtz is ensconced in a Germany camp right now, isn't it? They're in Nations League action. They've got their semi-final on Wednesday. And then dependent on how that goes, they've got their final or 3rd, 4th place playoff on the Sunday. So nothing's going to sort of move rapidly. I guess people are looking for some sort of confirmation though, aren't they? But it depends who you want to name, like Ornstein, Joyce, Plettenberg, Romano. I mean, a number of those have got the Wirtz stuff as their pinned tweet right now, haven't they? All of those are saying the two clubs are still talking. All of those are saying, and more are saying, there's confidence on both sides it will get done. It's just trying to work out a deal for both parties. And I mean, we've talked about it before, haven't we? That Harvey Elliott's been suggested. That looks like maybe a non-starter now. Jarell Quansah. So there's even a potential for a player to be in the mix as well, which, if that happens, yes, it'll be a separate deal. It won't be interconnected for PSR. Of course it won't. But it just makes negotiations even more complicated, doesn't it, really? But I don't think that'll happen. I think it will be a straight cash deal with add-ons and clauses. But as it stands right now, personally, and everyone's entitled to opinions, people can behave how they want, I just don't think I'm that worried about it. I'm still confident that Florian Wirtz ends up a Liverpool player.
So to just pull apart a few of the aspects of it here, the player angle to either sweeten the deal or in some way massage the overall number that it looks like we're paying out is very much part. And you mentioned Harvey Elliott was one of the names, but again, that could be just people being fanciful. I'm not sure that came from anywhere of note. Like you, I also saw Kwanzaa being discussed. And then lots of people pushing back and saying, well, why would either of those go to the Bundesliga when they can get a club in the Premier League? And maybe there's something to that, and maybe there's not. Maybe that's just Premier League bias and snobbery that fans of clubs from the Premier League would have. But that is a complicating factor. Can I just clarify? Because I've seen it reported, and again, I don't know how much faith I put in any of them. As you know, I'm very skeptical about even the more reliable guys. The concept was that the player himself was into it, that he wanted the move, and that I would have assumed then, and maybe this is wrong of me, that the personal terms aspect of things would be fine. But what people have to understand, David, don't they, is that this is going to be a world record fee, possibly. It's certainly going to be a Liverpool record. And we don't just go splashing about Liverpool record fees without having done all the due diligence in the world. So this is going to be a moving target until it's not. It could collapse, sure, but there are so many aspects to it. To expect it's just going to be signed, sealed in a little bow on the first day of this short transfer window is probably silly. And the reality is that people need to possibly brace for it, Dave. Maybe it doesn't get done in this initial window. That's probably something that people really need to take it on board and think, shit, okay, I maybe need to have some patience here.
Yeah, it's one of those where it could literally break tonight. It could even break tonight as we're talking. Who knows? I think if it goes beyond transfer window one, if we're calling it that, I could get why people would be a little concerned, because I'd be asking questions like, hold on, we've been talking a long time. Like, these are two slick operators, apparently, on both sides. What's going on? How's this sort of billing out? I think as well, listen, we're on a transfer show, so we've got to be honest about this. I think sometimes people are filling the silence a little bit with stories, aren't they? They're still in advanced negotiations, and there's a little to and fro. And let's be clear, as a few journalists have said, Leverkusen are giving information to the German side. Liverpool are giving information to the patch journos and the others. There's all a little bit of back and forth. But yeah, as it stands right now, people are entitled to think what they want. But all I can really say is, as I sit here, from the info we've got, from what we're hearing, I'm pretty confident that Wirtz ends up at Liverpool.
And so if that is to be the case, and we can all just be positive thinking about this, can I suggest that those of you who are out there perhaps doing your team generator things, work out where it is that Wirtz actually plays, because that is driving me insane. Some of the fancy full 11s I've seen. Yeah, and these will be the people who are most vocal about why, FSG should be out, etc. If it's not being done immediately, and they don't even seem to understand where the guy plays. But there are plenty of other stories where we have a little bit more meat on the bone. And one that's edging towards a conclusion that's not going to be a happy one for a lot of people who have taken him to their hearts is the fact that Luis Diaz seems to be more out than in, to use a phrase from the earlier part of the season at the moment. And I think an awful lot of people, with his strong finish to the season, his strong beginning to the season, the fact that he is this dynamic, bustling player, the fact that he's got one of the best songs ever, so he's obviously quite well got. And he is a guy who makes things happen, even if his end product isn't really what we want in terms of the full number crunches. But there have been some posts lately, and we're all getting all amateur psychologists, aren't we? Reading between the lines. We were doing it last week. I was doing it last week with Simicus, and we got to be quite expert in it with various people. People were looking at what our Harvey Elliott was saying, what Robbo was saying. But both Diaz and his wife have put posts up, which depends on how you want to read them, could be seen as, like the others, sort of the initial part of a farewell. Are we any closer to a solid offer around Diaz from either Barcelona, who are linked, or from Saudi, who we know are interested?
Yeah, I think there's expectation in the near future that one of those is going to step up in a specific one. It's like you said, the Saudi links there. Romano's mentioned it. Paul Joyce has done articles on it as well. So, there's real smoke, if you want to call it that. And it's interesting to mention that Diaz a while ago changed his sports management agency as well. So that comes into the mix because when you saw that Luis Diaz statement, you were thinking, we've all heard Luis Diaz. We saw him enjoying himself, shall we say, on the parade. Like, there's no way Luis Diaz has used these words himself, has he? Not a chance that Luis Diaz has opened with, and so comes to an end another season at this United. Not a chance Luis Diaz has used those words, people. Like, come on. But it's as people say, there's a few lines that one there. One I will always carry in my heart. That's one that people latched onto. Yeah. And then somebody we've not heard before at all, Luis Diaz's other half, also then puts on their social media a very similar-ish statement, it's fair to say. But this time we've moved from heart, something we carry in our souls. And we're like, hold on, this is going one up. We'll go in heart, we'll go in soul, we'll go in the universe soon, maybe, if things happen. But people are, like you say, looking into those things. I think the big thing about Luis Diaz is, we said this a few times from the information we've got, Saudi is his third choice. Ultimately, Luis and Papa want Barcelona to finally ante up, pull a lever, get that going. And we see this story time and time again. And we're even seeing a regurgitation of he's the top target, which, okay, that's fine. But Barca have got to find some cash and pull some levers. And how much do we believe in that, really? So option number one, how credible? Option number two, Luis Diaz has a lot of saying. And this is important because people know the name Pipe Sierra, the Colombian journalist. And he's put it out a few times that there will be talks at the end of the season between Liverpool and Diaz about his future and, talking about a contract. The only other side to that, Trev, is, and we've had patch journos on our shows digging around that. No one's got that Liverpool are about to enter talks with Luis Diaz or his camp about a new contract at all. No one's got that whatsoever. So either Pipe's on an exclusive there when it does come out, to be fair to him, and kudos to him on that, or does it feel like it's more of a story for laying the groundwork, shall we say, as in, it's quite clear Luis Diaz wants a new contract. But Barcelona aren't going to pull a lever, and Liverpool aren't going to give him one as his second option. There, funnily enough, comes the form of Al Nassr, doesn't there, in the Saudi bag, as we talked about. And to be fair, there's obviously a number of stories around this, and that is the club that people are naming as well. I mean, they're going to offer massive money, aren't they? They're going to more than treble his wages on the offer he's on at Liverpool. So it's quite clear it's his third choice. But if no one else is making the offer, the club you're at aren't offering a new contract. And there's another option here where, someone's more than trebling your wages. I think we all get the sense of where this is heading to for Diaz and his family.
We do. It does have that feel. And I think if you read that statement by Diaz's missus, it's very much, I think, her writing, unlike the other one, which is, was crafted. Yeah. This has the few little sort of errors in it that would make you think it's actually her speaking in a second language. And it does have that overwhelming sort of emotional thing about the bond. And if you wanted to read it that, like, we're so delighted to be part of this ongoing project, you could read it that way. But a question for you, dude, and it's just putting you on the spot as opposed to anything else. This is not anything I expect you to have heard because, like we say, the stories are kind of thin on the ground in terms of the specifics. But in terms of an amount we could hope to accrue for the sale of Luis Diaz, what do you think would be respectable? Huge amounts of chat. We'll get to Caoimhín Kelleher about what Caoimhín should be earning Liverpool in the transfer market. And again, the usual suspects getting very bent out of shape about the fact that that didn't pan out. Of course, there were extenuating circumstances. Yeah. But Diaz is an asset who can create and score goals and is attractive as a kind of marquee signing. So what do you think would be reasonable for us to expect as a kind of incoming fee?
Well, if it is Al Nasser, we're dealing with an entity that's got plenty of cash, so there shouldn't be any lowballing elements or anything around that at all as well. For me, if Luis Diaz is going to depart, anything below 65 million, I'd be exceedingly disappointed with, especially because of the reputation our likes of Ed Woods and others have, etc. So yeah, 65 million for me, minimum. And I know people will stay higher and probably talk closer to 70, which is fine. But for me, 65 million starting from there.
Now, you haven't popped it in the notes, but I just want to throw it at you as well because you just brought the guys up. And I saw tremendous amounts of fawning and plaudits being headed towards Dickie Hughes and Big Mick about their outstanding achievement in milking whatever it was, 10 million euros out of Real Madrid. Yeah. And there are two ways to look at that, Dave. You can be very black-pilled about it and say, well, that's Real trying not to sour the waters in case they want to come back for Liverpool players in the future. And it's almost like a gesture. Or it is a sign of their desperation to get Trent Alexander-Arnold in a white shirt for this really important competition. Just a word on that whole thing from you, because most people, I think it's fair enough to say, were very impressed with the idea that we got 10 million-ish, whatever it was, 8.5 million pounds, British pounds, for that particular transaction when he was going on a free. And we've all known he was going on a free for at least a season.
I think it's great business. Genuinely, I do. I think in terms of, was it 20 million they offered in January, wasn't it? Which people kind of saw as insulting a little bit, but you understood with the time left to go. And they said, no, it's not worth us getting that 20 million. It's about a title charge, which proved successful, and keeping him for this. They could have held on to him. And probably the barometer I'd use for this, Trev, was the only person I've heard so far say it's bad business or that Liverpool should have turned it down is Gabriel Agbonlahor on TalkSport. So if you want to align yourself on that IQ metric, people, fair play, power to you type of thing. But for a guy that's got, had less than a month or so left to go when it was done, to get that done, get the best part of 10 million euros and the wages transferred, so the whole package was about 10 million quid. Pays for the first instalment of Jeremy Frimpong. I'm happy with that. I think that's good and wise business, personally.
Yeah, I think there's a whole lot of upside. And like I say, I allowed myself to go to the black pill for a moment. And then I went, yeah, okay, but still, so what? It's still money in. It all helps towards what we're trying to do in the immediate future, which is good, I think, end of story. Yeah, and very wise advice. Sage advice from Dave there. Don't trust the sentient potato that's operating on TalkSport at all. Next up is Kerkez, and I'm loving this story at the moment because it has the most legs of any story that's currently going on. If the Wirtz thing has gone a little bit quiet, this one has amped up the volume, all sorts of angles coming on Kerkez. Where are we now in terms of the latest?
Yeah, and we were literally chatting about an hour ago or so, weren't we? And greatest apologies to him. I'm pronouncing this wrong, but he's on the screen there. Uriel Looked, I think it's pronounced, who we hadn't heard of till an hour ago, but we now would like to declare him as our Lord, God and Saviour, in all honesty, because he's broken it that Liverpool are or have agreed a deal for Milos Kerkez. And as it says there on the screen, complete agreement with Bournemouth for the transfer. The fullback will sign a contract for 5 seasons. So people, and I understand this, will be saying, who? What? Where's that come from? And others will be going, I have no idea who this is, but he's saying what I want to say, so I'm just going to fully believe it and steer into it, which is natural with these things. We know how it all works. But doing a bit of digging on this, Oriol, if I'm pronouncing it right, was the guy that broke Julio Soler to Bournemouth, the left-back from the Argentine left-back who went from Lanús. He broke that story and has done an interview as well. He's also, as we know, and we've had a few screenshots on this, digging around, quite a few are saying, yeah, absolutely reliable, well-known. So Again, this is information that's come to us in the last, hour and a half, it's fair to say, as we were digging around. So we're just presenting it to you unvarnished there. But the fact he did break the Solaire to Bournemouth gives you a little bit more confidence. As we also shared screenshots, quite a few journalists have almost, I don't know what you call it, vouched for him, should we say, or said, yeah, this guy's reliable in that regard as well. So all we can do is present that. But it's also fair to say, and again, you can make a decision on which journos you like. A few have mentioned this. Romano did the famous hourglass, didn't he, with the eyes and things like on this one as well. So I think we're hoping, maybe expecting, to be fair, some news or developments on this.
To be fair, nobody has been more intent on signing this one or indicating this one than the player himself. I mean, he has been an absolute sideshow of little hints left, right, and center with his social media work. And you can see why he would really want the move, obviously. Just again on this, the number that's being thrown around, and has been from the very start, to be fair, it seems as if the club are sticking very much to their guns. Maybe the player exchange thing will happen here with this one. But 45 million is a lot of money for a fullback, especially a young fullback. And when you compare and contrast his immediate predecessor and current incumbent, Andy Robertson, we've crowed an awful lot about what a wonderful signing Robbo was for sod all money. This is very much the other end of the dance hall. And you know where I am with this, Dave? And again, it's the line we come back to on this show all the time. It's not my money.
Yeah.
And that's how I very much feel about the Florian Wirtz thing as well. Liverpool are the records holders for a signing. Good. That's where we should be. Good. Liverpool are going to spend 45 million on the left back that they have chosen to be the guy who holds the shirt for the next 8 to 10 years. Good. You know what I mean? That's where I'm landing with it. And people will say that's naive in terms of the financial thinking. I'm not sure I care enough about that side of things. What do you make about the fee and the fact that it's been buzzing along so long now? Do you reckon that might be the stumbling block with it?
I do. I do think that the player wants to come. It's been, wide report by many that there's an agreement. I mean, he's about as subtle as Sledgehammer on social media, isn't he, as well, with all the things he's liking, tweeting, and, so it's quite clear it's wanted from one end. But, I mean, we've talked about this. Bournemouth are in such a strong position, aren't they, because of the funds they've got in from the likes of Huijsen. They're in their rights as well to demand sort of top dollar after the season he's had. So I get it. It's one of those where, and we fully expect it to happen. If it is below 45 million, you probably have the feeling it'll be one of those, it's 40 million with 5 million that could be in add-ons if he hits certain markers. You're not going to get much change out of 45, which, to be right, the bit of me thinks that is top dollar on the fullback market. But like we say, that sort of stuff doesn't turn me on, the finances inside out. So if Arne Slot, Hughes, Edwards, whoever think this is the left fullback that they want, this is the right player, let's get him in and we'll worry about the rest later.
100%. I think most people, if they're completely honest with themselves, are the same in that regard. We have other stories, however. We know that we're linked with yet another attacker, and that's including if Wirtz goes through, and we'll get there. We also have some positive news on the contract front that we've been covering for weeks now. We'll get there as well. But first of all, let's start with an actual outgoing, some money in for the club, a player headed out in Caoimhín Kelleher. The deal details, as far as I could see, were 18 million. And again, when you factor in that most people were hoping for 30, that's where an awful lot of people were, a little bit disappointed, I think. But it could have some very beneficial side effects, this whole deal. And I know you've got a few angles here that you wanted to talk about. There's also one of our young attackers who can't seem to get near or get a sniff of the first team here, who is in demand from more than one club. So let's start with Kelleher and go to the other outgoings.
Yeah, he's had his medical, isn't it? It could be announced at any time. This young Queeve is heading to Brentford, which is a great club for him because he's going to be number one there, obviously, which is great for Ireland. His good mate, is it Nathan Collins, the centre back, is there at the same time as well. So that's a lovely little link up there. We've got a great relationship with Brentford, obviously, Sepp van der Berg, Fabio Carvalho. So it keeps that strong for the future as well. Also, a few journos have mentioned this. There's the link with Leverkusen, and people, I think if you picked up on this, Leverkusen have signed Flecken from Brentford, and that's been almost allowed to be smoothly done because they've allowed him to go because they've been able to get Kelleher so quickly and smoothly for a very good fee. People will see it. So I don't, as a few journos have mentioned, I think that link just helps keep Liverpool and Leverkusen sweet a little bit, doesn't it? Which doesn't hurt in current negotiations. The fee, well, 30 million is the barometer, I think. That's absolutely fine. But the important thing to remember is Kelleher's hardly playing. He's made it clear he wants to go. He made it clear he wasn't going to sign another contract. He only had, or when this goes right now, a year left to go on his deal. So for a year left to go, a fee that could rise to 80 million quid. I know it's lower than some will want, but there is a part of me also thinking that Queeve sat on the bench for a season and a half now, hasn't he? A little bit twiddling his thumbs or just agreeing to almost be Alisson cover for when his hammy goes twang every now and again type of thing. So with all that in the mix, I know people will say 30 million. I know people might be a bit disappointed with a package that can go to 18, but I get it. And I don't see it as that bad personally.
Yeah, I think it's so interesting, this one, with all the moving pieces, the goalkeeper situation with Flecken heading the other way, the fact that might have a knock-on effect for us in our deal about Wirtz. I think it's very, very interesting. And I think, unless I'm mistaken, you and I were saying 15 to 20 was possibly realistic for what we could expect. And there we are, right in the ballpark. So, 30 was always going to be a bit fanciful. But, of course, it's not like the guy isn't at least worth that amount. It's just you've got to put the various ducks in a row. The Ben Doak stuff.
Yeah, it's funny. Sky had this on their channel today, and they did it as a big breaking development. Like Everton are interested in Ben Doak, and it's like this has been talked about for weeks. Like it's no secret. Paul Joyce has done articles. We've talked about it for weeks. Everton like Ben Doak. There's no two ways about it. It's just a case of now, will Everton pay the fee that we want for Ben Doak? And quite a few have written about it. Bournemouth are also in the mix, funnily enough. They also like Ben Doak. It almost feels like we're rinse repeating last summer a bit, doesn't it? Or last January. Quite a few clubs like Ben Doak. Will they pay the fee required for him? And again, in terms of negotiation, we know how Liverpool work. They've put the articles or the stories, let's say, out there saying, we're looking for 30 million quid for Ben Doak. And Liverpool know they're not going to get 30 million quid for Ben Doak. It's just a starting point for negotiations, isn't it, in that regard? But you'd think it's one of those, again, somewhere north of 20 with add-ons in the mix as well would get it done. So it's just a case of, it sounds horrible to say because a lot of people like Ben Doak, but there's just no real future for him at Anfield. That's all the noises that are coming out. And it doesn't make him a bad player. But when you're up against Salah on the right-hand side, and if you want to play in the other positions, the likes of Florian Wirtz are coming into the mix. And there's other talented youngsters and, other forwards looking to be brought in before you even look at what's there. There's just not a pathway for the kid, isn't it? So it sounds horrible, but this is just the right move for all parties when it happens.
Yeah, and the numbers you're throwing around there were the numbers that were sort of being mentioned all the way through. And again, Liverpool fans were hoping for more of a 30 million number. And again, it just seems fanciful because he doesn't have a proven record in Liverpool first team shirt. So how can you sometimes I think people are a little bit delusional about what they expect to get in return for potential, which is what that guy is in terms of proven Premier League quality. I can't help but think of Harvey Elliott in this conversation now. We should just mention him. I know you haven't necessarily brought him up, but he is going to be kind of possibly the one that everybody thinks is likely to head out, because again, it's the same argument as for Doak, just not as extreme, but this pretty much the same. He can't get a sniff of the first team on a regular basis. And like with Doak, as you said, that doesn't make the guy a bad player. It makes him not a Liverpool player currently. So are there any Harvey rumors? Because all I've heard is him as part of the exchanges, like the one we talked about earlier on.
Plenty, yeah. There's a lot. We said it before. There's a lot of clubs are interested in Harvey Elliott. We know Newcastle, Wolves have approached Liverpool about him. That Brighton have been mentioned before. Leverkusen, obviously, it doesn't look like that's going to be part of any Wirtz deal. But yeah, Harvey Elliott is going to make the call, and I think my honest sort of, the bits we're seeing, he wants to go. Because he thinks in terms of, no, actually, let me correct that. Harvey Elliott wants to be a success at Liverpool. Sorry, we know that. We know he's a big Liverpool fan. This is his dream. He would love it to become true. But he's also real in the sense of where he is in the pecking order, the lack of minutes he got last season. And by the way, with the greatest respect to him, Florian Wirtz coming in isn't going to help his campaign, is it, to get more minutes? The writing's on the wall for Harvey Elliott, really, which is a little bit sad in a way, but Harvey Elliott can be a good Premier League player or a good player at another club. It's just for him to make the decision as to where he wants to go. There's plenty of interest in him. We're all just expecting a parting of the ways at some point.
You would imagine, though, that unlike with the Kelleher thing, there aren't as many extenuating circumstances here, unless he is some sort of a make weight and some other deal. And we will be hanging out for a decent fee for Harvey, you would imagine. So it'll be interesting to watch that one. Now, we are obviously still very much linked, even though people don't want to believe it, because the stories that we're getting are from, as reliable a sources as we can manage, who are insisting that even with Wirtz, we're looking at a top-end attacker to lead our line, sort of thing, the number 9 type. There are stories still about Alvarez, which was, I think, you and I, that's the dream target.
Yeah.
There was Rodrigo stories. Oddly enough, Anthony Gordon stories coming back, although he's not that type of player. Neither is Nico Williams, but more Nico Williams stories. And Ekitike, who very much is that type of player. Also, Sesko mentioned. I mean, take your pick, really. And what's really interesting, Dave, which I didn't see it coming because we had been so not in the conversation at all around Gyökeres. And then all of a sudden, over the last couple of days, we are very much in the conversation about Gyökeres, depending, of course, on who you're listening to.
Yeah.
And we are going to lose Núñez for sure. There's no way Núñez hangs around. Diaz now, like we said, is likely to go. And Chiesa, lovely fella and all as he is likely to want to actually have a career. And he's not going to get that from Arne Slot. Yeah. So with all of those things in mind, are we any further in terms of a concrete link to an actual striker who might actually hit the net on a more regular basis than poor old Darwin did?
I think, honestly, again, just almost like trying to sound like rinse repeat a little bit, but Tijuana Tacos, again, that when we're asking around, Trev, it's the same, that Liverpool are definitely looking, is the noise across the board, for another attacker after Wirtz comes. And we said before, they've been looking at all different types, almost on previous shows, hadn't we? Like a number 9. And then Sam Maguire had this exclusive, and it is his exclusive, it's fair to say, and it's been stood up by a few, that Ramos, who PSG are quite happy to sell, is a Mendes client. We've got that relationship quite strong. So this could be one that it's not top of the list, as Sam writes. It's well down the list. But in terms of the value in the market, this could be one where they think, do you know what, that's the best value one, so we'll pull the trigger on this. So it is a real possibility. But as you mentioned, other journos saying Nico Williams, Anthony Gordon, even players that come wide and could play as a forward, and, an interchanging front line as well. And then I remember we talked about this ages ago. We're saying we're hearing nothing. Gyökeres's name comes in the mix all of a sudden over the last few days, and plane spotting's back in the mix, isn't it? And people are calling out flights to Stockholm and back and all this, and betting agencies are moving him to favourite all of a sudden in the options. So people are looking at that. Got to be completely honest on this. We've always said we had nothing on Gyökeres, and even digging again today with all these things, everything we're getting back is no, not heard anything on Gyökeres. So maybe the plane spotting brigade have got it, but we haven't in this regard. But like you said, Núñez is clearly going to go. The smart money says that Diaz is now going to go. You'd be betting crazy money to think Chiesa's still at the club. You never know, stranger things, but you wouldn't really bet any solid money that he's at the club. So if those three go, you can't just replace them with one Florian Wirtz in terms of numbers and minutes that way as well, can you? So, yeah, it's a full expectation. And he's probably right to say that it's unlikely this one would get done in transfer window one, would it? Probably a bit further down the line because there's sales and other things to do. But there's a real expectation that another attacker on top of Wirtz arrives at Anfield this summer.
I mean, it properly is. In terms of the names we're being linked to, it properly is the Tijuana Tacos. We are looking at quality footballers, which is it's marvelous. You gotta love jet tracking time of the year, and hats off to Anfield Index's own Adam Patricione, who's quite the leader of the plane trackers. I have to say, always knows where all the jets are. A lot of action in Blackpool at the moment. That's all we're saying. We have one last story, and it's good news, Dave, because one of the things that we've been fretting about over the recent times was we have so much change to make across this team that we'd love to be able to hang on to the very best of the lads that we have. And in that category is where Ibrahima Konate falls. And there were all these stories and then some really interesting quotes that emerged. I think between when you and I have done this show and the last one, further quotes. And he seemed a little bit miffed at how he'd been sort of misrepresented as regards. And he was still quite vague, don't get me wrong. He was still quite vague, but not in a negative way, not in one of those ways like, where you think he's on his way out. It does seem to be a bit more positive around Ibrahima Konate staying at the club.
Yeah, I think there's nothing. We have to be careful because I think some people say, "Oh, is it done?" Like there's no indication this is done, but from almost a wall of silence around Konate and the worry that we weren't hearing anything, which was not a nice veil of silence, to Konate starting to speak about it. Konate saying as well, "Yeah, my agent's starting to speak to the club." Paul Gorster and others mentioning today that, yeah, absolutely, there are talks ongoing between Konate's agent at the club. It's not a resolution, but it's a positive at the same time from where we were. And we've talked about this. For all the summer business we've got to do, and we want, obviously, Liverpool to do a lot of summer business, getting Konate re-signed is a big thing for us. There's no two ways about it at all. And it's interesting, we've talked about this. There's no real centre-back links anymore, is there? There's nothing really pressing. We've got left-backs linked. We've got right-back signed. We've got, whether you want to call Wirtz a 10, an attacking midfielder, a false, whatever. But all centre-back links seem pretty dry at the moment. And maybe it might be 2-2 and getting 26, but you're just hoping that there's maybe a decent announcement in the near future around the guy on the screen. Fingers crossed.
You've got to love the Liverpool fan account I saw today, who was saying, please come and join, be the final link in the strongest team in the world, brother, and wanting Ibu to go to PSG. I'm not sure what his brain is doing, but it is interesting in the wake of some quotes that re-emerged today in a certain thread that you're part of, same as me, from Old Brand 66 there, from a recent-ish interview where he was talking about, I want to be a captain, not the captain of Liverpool, a captain, win individual honours, success, etc. If Ibrahima Konate is anything, he has the potential, doesn't he, to be the guy who just takes over the mantle as our dominant centre half when and if Virgil retires and holds that mantle for several years. So I'm very excited about anything that has got to do with him staying. I've got 2 names to throw at you from the chats that have just come up. I've not seen anything about any of these, and they could have plucked them from the sky. One person asking, did you hear anything about Nicholas Jackson to Liverpool? I know I haven't.
No, and you
Nothing
won't
there.
because he's pick. So no.
And the second one is any truth in the Mark Guay stories. Again, I haven't heard recent Mark Guay stories, but maybe
nothing recent. We've had quite. It was probably a good few months ago since we started doing these. That Liverpool had looked at Mark Guay with a year left to go, but almost reiterating what we said before that. Yeah, all the centre back names just now seem to be quiet. So yeah, nothing on that one recently.
We have lots to do, and as ever, we've gone long in the Liverpool section, but that's why most of you are here. So we do try to weight it that way.